and welcome to Connected Conversations for Creatives, a place where creatives like you can learn, grow, and connect. I'm your host, Jennifer Carr. Creatives, whether you're a digital designer, a writer, a musician, or any other kind of artist, you know the exhilaration and exhaustion that comes with pursuing your passion. Our world is filled with endless possibilities, but can also be a very high pressure environment where we constantly strive for originality and excellence. That's why it's more important than ever for us, the creators, to understand how self-care can play a pivotal role in our creative journeys. Today's guest is here to share some practical self-care strategies tailored for the modern artist. We'll explore mindfulness, the art of setting healthy boundaries, and the importance of self-compassion. This isn't about old advice, but actionable steps to ensure your creativity thrives in today's world. Stefani Fryzel is an artist, songwriter, and author who has recently penned a book called Self-Care for the Creative, a survival guide for creatives, empaths, and highly sensitive people. And I am thrilled that she's agreed to join me today to talk about some of these issues creatives struggle with and how we can address them on a daily basis. So welcome, Stefani.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I am so glad you're here too, because this is a huge topic of conversation that we don't always talk about because we sometimes think of self-care as being selfish. And I don't want that to be the mentality that surrounds it. But before we kind of jump into that, congratulations on launching your book. That's huge. I know how that feels. And I know that's like a big accomplishment. You're just like, it. So congratulations on that.
I appreciate it.
And so tell us a little bit about yourself, your creative journey, and how you ended up writing a book in the first place.
Sure. So I am an artist and a songwriter and a new author, and I've been in the music industry for almost 2 decades. And I struggled with my own mental health when I was a teenager and also didn't know that I was an empath until much later on in life, like at 30. And so the first portion of my life, I had no idea why I was struggling so much with sensitivity. I was obviously very creative and really, I would just be so deep in thought and like didn't know that I was struggling with added sensitivity and wished that I had known that this was a thing. And there's things that you can do, there's tools, there's techniques. And I had the idea for the book top of 2020, and then the pandemic hit. Things slowed down a little bit and our worlds got smaller and bigger at the same time. And I had the chance to just be like, you know what, I think now is the time to kind of go for this dream of writing a book. And, for the longest time, it was kind of like this far off dream that I was like, one day I'll write a book. And then for some reason, it just was like the perfect incubator and environment for me to just, pull together all the experiences that I've already been through, put them in a place that could just sort of encapsulate what the artist lifestyle is like. And yeah, it just became really important to me to be able to pass on something to the next generation to help them so that it's not so hard and so lonely.
Yeah, I think sometimes we take for granted the fact, if you look back at 2020 when that pandemic came through and everything shut down and we all just went, oh, now what? But oh my goodness, it opened so many doors. Like you said, our worlds got smaller, but so much bigger at the same time. And it opened up a lot of people's ability to pursue passions they may not have even known they had, right? All these people all of a sudden started keeping chickens in their yard and they're writing books and that kind of thing,
Gardening, yeah.
Yes. And they were like, oh my gosh, this is something that I'm good at, or it brings joy, or whatever the case may be. And so I'm so glad you took advantage of that opportunity and just realized that this was something that you wanted to do, and then to just use your past, what you've struggled with, to help somebody else. I think that is the heart of an empath right there, is saying, I feel your pain and therefore I'm going to help you through it. It's a good and a bad, right, when it comes to being a creative and having that empathic spirit.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a superpower, but it comes with a cost. Like, it's the thing that makes me a good songwriter. Like, I'm able to be in the room with someone and listen to their story and hear what they're going through and help them craft a message in the music and the lyrics and the melody and stuff. But at the end of the day, I might be going home wearing emotions that aren't mine, or feeling like, oh, I wish I could do more for this person, without realizing, oh, it's costing me energy to think and hold space for another person or multiple people or whoever it is. So yeah, it's definitely a gift and a curse.
That is such It is such a gift. I was talking to a lady the other day who literally her business is coaching through songwriting, and she coaches people through the art of songwriting to help them process their emotions. But she was saying a very similar thing, that, she goes home and it's like, whoo, I have to now process my emotions and their emotions. And so what does that look like for you?
I'm so glad you brought this up, because I actually created a technique in the book specifically for empaths, and it's called emotion separation. And this is a brand new technique. It's trademarked and everything, so it didn't exist before the book. And I was actually out one night with friends, and I was at a dinner table, and somebody was going through a breakup, somebody was going through a job transition, and like I went home, we had some drinks, whatever. I came home and I had this big ball of emotions going on, and I was like, what is mine and what isn't? And I just started writing down all my feelings, and then I naturally started labeling them as mine or not mine. And I was like, wait a second, this is so impactful and so powerful. So I created the technique emotion separation. And the definition is the act of differentiating or separating your emotions from another person. And it's super easy. You can do it in 3 steps. Step 1, you write down all your emotions, kind of like sorting through emotional laundry. You just dump it all out on the floor. And then step 2, you label it, mine or not mine. And you just sort of sift through and be like, okay, this pair of jeans is mine and that t-shirt's not mine. And step 3 is to claim it, claim what's yours, and sort of energetically release what isn't. So you can kind of give yourself that permission to let go of things that aren't yours, and that you don't have to wear that in your body anymore. Because emotions, empaths, we pick up so many energies throughout the day, and we carry emotional baggage. And that's one of the hardest things about being an empath.
It really is. And my goodness, you can use that same technique in relationships, because those of us who, we have a different kind of attachment, situation where we think, oh my gosh, they're mad at me. As whether it's friendships or a romantic relationship, whatever the case may be, we take on we assume other people's feelings about us as well. And so you have to process these things and say, am I projecting? Am I receiving? Like, what's going on here? So and I love that visual, because we all know what laundry looks like, and sorting laundry.
Yeah. It's just like a bin of clothes, and you're like, okay, well, that's my husband's, and this is definitely mine. So yeah, no, I love that. I love that visual as well, just because it makes so much sense, and it's easy to think of, and you can do it in less than 5 minutes if you have a really high socializing event, or a high absorbing day, like just like a fully loaded day. You can just do it in 5 minutes and write down in your journal and separate things. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And it's work. I mean, honestly, laundry is work. Sorting through it is work. And so you have to make it a priority. Otherwise, you're not going to have clothes in the closet. And so if it's not a priority, then you're going to have all of these emotions hanging on to you, and you're like, I don't know what to do next.
Right. But what's so great about it is you can literally, once you write it down, you can literally see immediately, like, oh yeah, this is 100% mine. Oh, this is definitely not mine. So it's like, okay, well, if this is not mine, I should just let that go immediately, rather than, just walking yourself through that process really does help. Otherwise, it can just be like this heady thing, this emotional thing that just lives in you. So having that ritual of being able to just separate helps a lot.
Absolutely. No, that's fantastic. So let's talk about, like, what is your definition of self-care? That's actually a form of self-care, making sure that you're processing your emotions and that kind of thing. But what else do you define self-care as?
Sure. So self-care really depends on the person. Everybody has their own definition, and it's not going to be the same for each person. There's really no one size fits all, especially when it comes to artists and creatives and empaths, because our thresholds are going to be different too. So maybe you can handle an hour of socializing, but maybe you can't. Who knows? Maybe you're an extrovert or an introvert or both. Everybody's situation looks a little bit different, and their threshold is different. So I think self-care just in general is being able to be self-aware of what your limits are with certain things, what your fuel up sort of stations are, like the things that re-energize you, restore you, give you that sort of lift again, and being able to recognize the things that are going to drain you. And so this all just comes from self-awareness, and it's just going to look a little bit different to each person.
Absolutely. And, self-awareness is something that, for whatever reason, we're so aware of the world around us. And
Yes.
maybe that's why we're not self-aware, is because we're so busy looking around us and observing and taking in that we
Right.
forget
Like,
to be
what's
like,
over here? What's over there? Yeah. Yeah.
something shiny, I should go write about that, or whatever
Totally.
the case may be. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but it's definitely a deliberate thing. Like, self-awareness has to be a very deliberate thing. You have to think about it. It has to be a conscious action. And then taking these intentional steps towards improving yourself, whether
Right.
it's through practices, like the laundry sorting or what have you. And it's a whole body experience, right? It's
Yes.
physical, emotional, mental. It has to be everything, because if you let something build up in one part or the other, then it can overtake the rest of the whole person. And so, yeah,
Right.
it's definitely
Exactly.
person to person. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Um,
that's one of the things that I think was really important in this book, particularly. There's tons of techniques and methods and stuff, but it was really important to me to pepper it with self-reflection, journal prompts, little things here and there, because I can give you a ton of information, but if you're not walking yourself through that process of what that looks like for you, then you're not going to give yourself the chance to have that self-awareness or find out the things in the process, like, oh, actually, these are my needs. Didn't know that until I went through this worksheet. Okay, great. So that's something that was really important to me, was including prompts and worksheets in the book that prompt and promote that self-awareness.
Oh, that's fantastic. And creatives like writers and musicians, we often face different challenges from one another, but also just from non-creatives. What are some of the challenges maybe you have faced that kind of made you go, I need a mechanism to cope with this?
Well, I think emotion separation for sure was like the thing that I was like, oh, okay, this is really going to change my life. But I think recognizing when I had hit a certain point where I was absorbing too much. So I think way back when, before I realized I was an empath, I was dishing out my energy to everybody that was, standing 2 feet in front of me. And I realized I didn't have to do that. Not everybody deserves that type of access to you. And you get to choose who has that access to you and who you get to give that energy to, or who you get to absorb. And before, I was just absorbing and absorbing all the time. And now when I know if I'm around a particular person or a particular situation or whatever, I'm like, I already know that's going to hit me a certain way. And I might just put up my little shield, my little energetic shield, or my witchy sprays or whatever. And I just, again, have that self-awareness that I didn't have before, whereas I was just wide open to everything around me all the time. And I just wasn't, just aware, or like things were permeating through me all the time. And now I have the conscious choice to be like, nope, or yes. Yeah.
Yes, and so many of us do struggle, and this is not just for creatives, but we struggle with setting and maintaining our boundaries.
Yes.
Whether it's mental or physical or emotional, our bandwidth is only limited to so much. We don't have an endless supply of it. And so setting those boundaries effectively means that sometimes we have to either cut people out or be willing to put up those shields and be like, you only get so much of me today. And just making sure that your circle of influence is open to hearing the word no, or even just learning the word no, because
Yes.
some of us don't know how to say no very well. And it's a skill you do have to learn, especially if you maybe you were raised in an environment where no was not an option, where you complied or you were expected to do X, Y, and Z. And so and especially as creatives, when you have expectations on you. So yeah, boundary setting is huge, and we have to make sure that we're building that community around ourselves of people willing to respect those boundaries. So like, how do we create that culture? How do we create that community around us?
In terms of boundary setting, or
Yeah, or just
yeah,
in general, a healthy community where boundaries are respected even.
right. It's interesting because it's something that I used to believe in the beginning of my career was to say yes to everything. And to someone new, I would still lean towards that belief, just because if you're new and, like saying yes to lots of things is like all the experience you can get is a good thing. But at some point you reach a point in your career when you're like, okay, what am I really passionate about? What are the projects I'm really excited about? Because eventually there'll be no shortage of things that come knocking on your door. And if you said yes to everything, you're wearing yourself out. You're not actually saying yes to the things that light you up. So something that I think about now is saying no equals saying yes to something better. So if you're not 100% on board with it and your soul's not singing and it's not really excited about it, you don't have to say yes to those things, and you can absolutely say no. And it's just kind of a practice thing with setting those boundaries, even if it's just like not being able to go out one night because you're tired. Like there's a way to say, you know what, I would really love to be there, but you know what, I've just been so hectic lately, and like tonight is really my only chance to catch up on rest, and that's what I need to do. So I think to change the culture, it really is on us, and to set a new sort of precedent and set a new example. And we have to be that example. And then it'll rub off on other people.
That's true. And it's, again, no is a full sentence, right? So like you
Yes.
never even have to justify your no if you don't want to. Like if you say
Exactly.
no and
And
somebody
oh,
pushes, that's
yeah.
right. And if
Yeah.
somebody's going to push up against that, that's because they were benefiting without that boundary before, and now that boundary is in their way and they don't like that. And so that's probably not a person you want in your community, in your environment anyway. If they're going to push up against, now it's one thing to have someone jokingly be like, oh, come on, but if it becomes more than that, and it's more than just are you sure, let me just check in one more time, are you sure? And after
Right.
that, no is no.
Right. Exactly. And there's ways you can sort of do like a 1-2 step with that kind of
Mhm.
boundary. Like you can set your boundary and then see how the other person reacts. And then
Mm.
based on their reaction, you can sort of deploy step 2. And your step 2 is like, okay, this person either respected the boundary or responded positively, or they responded negatively, or just did not, just totally, you said after you clearly set the boundary, they're still continuing to break it. Then it's up to you to kind of come up with like a secondary plan and be like, okay, since we've had this conversation of my previous boundary, it seems as though it's still an issue. At this point, now I have to do X, Y, Z, whatever that looks like to you. But yeah, they're tricky, and like anybody that really loves you and supports you will understand and will care about your feelings and will care about how things are affecting you. And best case scenario, they'll even thank you and be like, thank you. Oh my gosh, I had no idea. Like I had no idea you felt this way when I said these things or did so yeah, and it's just practice, really.
It is. And it has to become a habit. It has to become a natural part of you, which for some of us, it's not. Boundaries have not always been easy for me. And because I've always been a people pleaser, I've always been somebody who was like immediately the first one to sign up to help if it was needed. And what does that do? That leads to burnout. Right.
Totally.
And that leads to, not being able to function in your daily life. And with the creative community, oh my goodness, anxiety, depression, and burnout, it's like it runs pretty rampant compared to the non-creative. I mean, that still happens. There are still, people who face those things, but the statistics are, I want to say, like 70 something percent of musicians burn out. And that's a huge percentage of burnout when it comes to just that one small part. And then with like other creatives, like artists and writers, I think it was about 50% was the statistic for burnout. And I thought, what are we doing? Why can't we stick with it? What's happening? And so now I'm a huge proponent. My background's marriage and family counseling, so I'm a huge proponent of professional intervention, counseling, therapy when it's needed, kind of thing. But we also need strategies to get us like through the day-to-day grind that we are in. So share if you want, from your book or just from your experience, some strategies that we can incorporate into our daily routines just to enhance our mental health and well-being.
Sure. Yeah. So with creatives, I was literally just talking about this the other night at my lunch event. Artist lifestyles are completely outside of the box. Like we don't have the normal 9 to 5. Our lifestyles are so unconventional. Like every day is different. It's a little bit of a wild, wild west. So one of the things that I talk about in my book is nailing some routines, because we often live lives that are not, we don't have a routine, right? So this is where the self-care comes in. It's just like, if you know you're an empath, you know you're a sensitive person, you know that you pull from your creative well daily, right? There should be some routines set up in place to support you, whether it's your morning routine, your end of day routine, your evening routine. Okay. So, and then we were talking about boundaries earlier, like there's boundaries with ourselves. Okay. Like, do we have boundaries with our phones? Do we have being able to just be like, okay, at night, I don't look at my phone past 9 o'clock or whatever it is, like whatever that looks like to that specific person. But I like to think of routines, and they don't have to be the same every single day. I think creatives love being able to be adventurous and switch things up, and that's why we're artists, right? But you can have sort of a Rolodex of different routines, maybe a slow morning routine, maybe a workout morning routine, and then you can kind of switch them up based on what it is that you're needing in that moment. So nothing's ever really set in stone, but I always like to recommend just playing with your morning routines, your evening routines. Having an end of day routine is a big one, because it's hard for us to clock out. That's something that people say all the time. As a creative, you're a creative entrepreneur, you're running your own business, you're managing a million things. Sometimes it's extremely hard to just turn off the brain. Like even if you leave your office and you're like, I'm still at work. So an end of day routine can look like your brain loves like the switch between an activity. So if you're writing or painting or whatever it is you're doing, having a little bit of a sequence of events between your work and then switching into your evening off, I'm chilling, it could be walking around the block, it could be tea, it could be those little transitional moments can really, really help thread the day a little bit better and give you that feeling of control and balance, I think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that having routines, and it's not something that we're used to anymore, because we do always have our phones in our faces, or we're constantly doing something and we don't take breaks to switch between this, that, and the other. And you're right, your brain does really appreciate that. But routines also tell your brain, hey, you know what's coming next. So there's nothing to be anxious about. And it takes that anxiety level down, maybe a notch or two, just on a regular basis. And I know that I could on a daily basis, benefit from lower anxiety levels.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yes. Yeah. And then just to piggyback off of that, like one of the first things I talk about is just focusing on the basics of self-care, because sometimes we like to overcomplicate things and be like, oh, it's got to be 10 therapy sessions and it's got to be 10 massages and stuff. I'm like, listen, girl, if you get a really good sleep and you hydrate and you work out and eat really well, you're probably going to eliminate a lot of that depression, anxiety, like it's really going to help, like makes a big difference. So starting at those basics is like exactly where I start. And it's funny because I remember this was around the time I discovered I was an empath. My therapist, I asked her, I was like, give me some self-care tools or whatever, because I was just discovering this for the first time. And she sent me home to monitor my basics. And I was like, really? I'm ready for like something more complicated. Like give me the emotional trauma, like give me the keys to the code, right? She's like, no, go home, monitor your sleep, monitor your water, monitor your everything. And like I went home and I was terrible. I was failing at everything. And I was like, oh, this is why it's so important to just like focus on those basics first and then build on it. So yeah, I think that's obviously these are things that we need every single day. So I think monitoring those is like step one.
Absolutely. And it's really funny. In psychology, you have the basic, like in order for a person to reach self-actualization, if their basic needs aren't met, and that's food, shelter, water, those kinds of things, if they're not met, you can't reach self-actualization. Like that is how it is. And so how could we ever find ourselves in a balanced state if we're not taking care of, we're basically very complicated house plants. We need the food, we need the water, and that kind of thing. And so if you don't take care of that, what happens? They shrivel up and they don't make it. And so,
Absolutely. I think of
yep.
being an empath is the exact same way. Like the plant, we as empaths, we're technically like special little plants that have, we're going to thrive under certain situations. We're going to need, X amount of sun, X amount of water, and like we're no different. So if you just, when you buy a plant, look at the instructions and you're like, okay, in order for this plant to thrive, it needs this. Like being an empath is literally the same thing. You're going to need alone time. You're going to need, quiet space. You're going to, these are just the things that are just going to help you thrive. And the quicker that you can honor that in yourself, the better you'll be.
Oh, for sure. If only people came with those little tabs that they stick in the plants that say you need exactly this, this, and this to be the best.
Right, right. Yeah, exactly, right. I love that.
Instead, it's just a little guessing game, but it's okay. Because in the end, we all know what the basics are. We just sometimes choose to ignore them, and we don't take care of ourselves the way that we need to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when you do practice these things, is that when you see, I know for me, it's when I see my creative potential and even just my confidence in my creativity, it goes way up. Is that true for you too?
Yeah, I think so. I think when I'm just in a really good base level, if I'm like, okay, I had a great sleep, I worked out, I have tons of energy for the day. Like it makes such a big difference when I, work out in the morning and I'm like, okay, great, I can totally slay this day. Like that is the difference between a catastrophic day or a wonderful day, that can be the difference. But I think, you mean like confidence in terms of like your creative process, or confidence in terms of like confidence in which realm would you say?
For me, when I am taking care of myself, I have the confidence that the art that I put forward, the words that I put on the page, or the conversations that I'm having with people, they're going to be impactful. They're going to be more meaningful because I'm going to have more confidence in myself because I have stuck to my plan. I have stuck to my goals, that kind of thing. I've done all the steps to get to where I'm going.
Right. Yeah. I think because we were talking about routines earlier, I was actually thinking about something that gives me confidence with my creativity and my creative process is discovering the point in the day that I actually feel the most creative. And what is the sweet spot? Because everybody has a sweet spot where they do their best work. And I actually discovered it while I was writing the book. And because I was this whole time I've been doing sessions and stuff as well, like songwriting, but those don't usually start until 1 p.m. and I only had a certain amount of time to write the book. So I was like getting up at like 5 a.m. to squeeze in the time to write the book. And so I'd be sitting at my desk and, it'd be 6 a.m. and I'm like, wow, I'm on fire right now. And I'm like, I'm not normally a morning person, but now I'm a full-on morning person. And so discovering that sort of sweet spot where I was the most focused and there's no distractions, there's no, I'm just like, yeah, it's like getting in the jet plane, right? Like, and one of the coolest things about this discovery of this time of day is you can tailor your entire day around that sweet spot. That's like such a great, easy strategy. Cause like, if you're like, okay, I'm trying to write a book, but like, I only have time at 10 p.m., but that's when I'm exhausted and burnt out and tired. Forget it. Like it's going to be like climbing Mount Everest, right? You want to find the point in the day where it feels like you're skiing downhill, because that's where the sauce is, and you can set yourself up for that success and set yourself up for that feeling of confidence in creating when you tailor around that specific time of day.
That is fantastic advice. And it's so true because there are times a day, like, don't ask me to write a word at 2 p.m. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
Yeah.
That brick wall has found me and we're just going to be best friends for a few minutes. And so writing doesn't happen, but 2 a.m. unfortunately my brain is wide awake a lot of times and it's like, hey, here's a good time to write. And so
wake up. Yeah.
there are no distractions, there's nothing going on, I have nothing to worry about except the fact that I'm not sleeping. But that's when most of my creativity, like the biggest bombs of creativity have hit me were at like 2
Yes.
a.m. And so that's
I
fantastic
know.
advice. Yeah.
I know sometimes it's annoying though, right? Because you're like, I'm trying to sleep, but okay, this is a great idea. I might as well just go write it down real quick. Yeah, I
Yes.
know.
But it's so true that, and you also have to know that that time could change for you just depending on your hormones and your life schedule and all that stuff. So just to be aware again of how am I feeling and do a constant check-in and say, okay, this week is probably not going to be 2 a.m. because I haven't slept, past 2 a.m. for the last week. And so it's going to probably be a different time of day.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about a lot of things and we've kind of come to the point where I'm going to flip the script and let go of the reins and let you take control of things. And so for
Ooh.
as long as you've got something on your mind, then you are now in control of the show.
Oh, so fun. Okay, well, I have questions.
Okay.
What's your book about?
I've written a couple. My first two are romantic suspense books, and my third is just a contemporary romance, childhood sweethearts, best friends, lovers, and then falling out, and we'll see what happens after that kind of thing. That one comes out in February, so
Oh my
they're
God,
fiction novels. Yeah.
exciting. I love that. I have, who knows, maybe I'll dip into this at some point, but I did have like a really weird, I mean, I know it'll be true if I tell my husband, if I come home one day and tell my husband, babe, I'm writing a romance novel, then it's gonna happen. But like in my mind, I have this like sweet fantasy of like, I think I could write a decent sex scene. I don't know. Like, I'm just like, but like it to me is just kind of like a fun place to play, especially as a woman, and like kind of discovering your connection to sexuality and all this stuff, and like what is the female gaze, like what, but on the page, right? So so my question is, what made you decide to write the romance in like romance land?
So I've always been a romantic at heart. I've always been one for, I'm a sucker for a love story. Like you give
Love
me
it.
a good love story. And so, but honestly, the first book came about because I was having a dream and I woke up before it was over and I needed to know how it ended. And so I just wrote it, and I was like, let's see how this goes. And I had enough for about 4 chapters and I looked at my husband, I went, I'm going to write a book just so you know.
Just so you know, yeah,
Just
yeah. It's
so you
always
know.
when you tell the husband, right? And then you're like, okay, it's on. If as soon as
That's
you come
right.
home and tell the husband, it's happening. Yeah, for real.
That's it. That's how it goes. And then he's like always my first reader for everything. And so, but that was what I was going to ask you is that, you've written a nonfiction. Have you ever considered dabbling in the fiction world? So,
Yes, I definitely like honestly now that like book one is behind me, I already I have a full idea for book two already. I'm probably gonna work on the book map like in like a few weeks just to get it started. I'm gonna enjoy this book first because it just came out. But yeah, no, I think now that I've opened the Pandora's box in Bookland, like I'm excited to just let my writer wings fly and see where it takes me, because there's just so many different ways that you can convey a message or a perspective. And since I'm coming from the world of music, like, that's always going to be my first love, and it'll always be part of my life and always something that I do. But you can just convey different ideas through different mediums. So I'm excited to see how my writing will take shape. And yeah, I think my husband and I don't have kids yet, but I really want to do a kids book at some point. I think that would be super fun. Maybe even kids music, just because that's hilarious. And I'm also interested in sort of dabbling in like the film world, whether it's like screenwriting or like a movie, or I don't know. I don't know. Just throwing it out there. I'm just putting the seeds out there. And I'm like, you know what, that could be cool to write a script or something. So yeah, I'm remaining open to the possibilities at this point.
nice. Well, if you go back, I've got several episodes back. You can, I did an interview with Stimson Sneed. He is a film director, and he's got a movie coming out in the spring. Oh my goodness. I wish I could remember what it was called. It just left me. Anyway, it's supposed to be
It'll
like
come back.
a big, yeah, it'll hit me like we'll hang up and I'll be like, oh, by the way,
I remember what it is now. Yeah.
But he was fascinating. We got along really great because we geek out over space and we're just kind of nerds like that. And so, but he was so laid
Talk to my
back and so
husband.
cool.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, he loved
I can
space.
watch that. Go back and watch that episode and then be like, hey, just call him up and be like, hey, Jennifer sent me. And he'll be like, okay. So
Yeah, no, he's totally into it. He's been going down a rabbit hole of like aliens and the alien invasion and stuff. And I'm like, all right, cool, man, let's do it.
okay,
Yeah.
so our husbands
Yeah.
could totally have a
Oh
conversation
yeah,
about that kind of thing
definitely.
because he likes to joke, halfway joke, about pyramids and aliens. And I'm like, honey, come on,
Oh,
come on.
girl, like Ancient Aliens is like literally my guilty pleasure. I love that show. Like obsessed. Yeah. Couldn't
That's
be.
funny.
Yeah, no, seriously.
Anything is possible. We don't know. Okay. What's your
Yeah.
next one? What you got?
Ooh, okay. What made you want to get into doing podcasts? Just curious.
That's a good question. So I have a podcast about health and wellness before the pandemic started. And because, my background is mental health and wellness and counseling and just the brain and taking care of your brain. And so then I just kind of moved it into a natural health and wellness arena. And then the pandemic happened and it became a very controversial topic that, taking care of yourself naturally was not really something that people wanted to hear about at the time, which is fine, to each their own, but it got to be a place of controversy and I'm not here for that. And so I
Right.
took a step back and said, okay, so we're not going to talk about that right now. And I was really, it was unfortunate because I was just starting a series on ADHD and the brain. And it's a very fascinating topic. But again, for people will find anything to push back against. And I was like, okay, fine. And so I took a step back. So I had a podcast before. This one came about because when I started writing the first book, I was like asking all these people questions. I was like, I don't know how to do this. How do I do this? And I'm not one to just go ask questions, but I had to because it was getting expensive not to. And
Right.
then I was like, would you have this conversation for other people to hear? And it just kind of built from there. And the next thing you know, I'm having, the filmmaker and an entertainment lawyer and, X, Y, and Z. And we're just like, hey, let's have all these
All
conversations
these
that are
creative.
relevant.
Yeah.
Yes, that are
Hmm.
relevant to the creative world who, somebody wants to know how to get into Hollywood. By all means, let's talk about that, So it was a necessity. It was born
Yeah.
from necessity.
I
Yeah.
love that. And I love that it was like kind of a happy accident. It was just like you ended up loving the conversations that you were having with creatives because they're just they're like a choose your own adventure, right? Like everybody does something different and everyone has a different skill set. And that's one of the things that I just love about being in songwriting rooms is because everybody has a different style and you can always learn something new from someone else. So yeah.
So what's your favorite outlet? Do you like the songwriting? You like the singing? The writing? What do you like the best?
Yeah, I mean, music is my main outlet, but I could probably argue that and say that writing has always been my outlet because as long as I can remember, even when I was a small kid, like when I was 5, I remember I started singing when I was 5, but I was like journaling and journaling and like my entire life is in journals. So I would say the act of writing was always something that I needed to just feel sane and feel connected to myself and feel like I was witnessing my own experience and being able to process my own experience. And to this day, I do my morning pages every morning. I journal regularly. I songwrite. But yeah, I would say music for sure, but I cannot go a day without writing. It's like impossible. Yeah.
That was me too. Like I was
Yeah.
always writing everything. And I didn't know at the time, like when I was younger, I didn't know that it was me processing my emotions, but
Mhm.
that's what it was. And
Yeah.
so when I was able to be like, oh, that's what that is. Oh my
Yep.
goodness, it changed how I looked at writing on top of that.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. No, for sure. Like I used to think it was just like this fun thing I did, but I was like, no, like I need this.
Yeah.
Like, I need
Yes.
this process to make sense of everything, or just like I said, like sort through things and process information. And yeah, and again, like when I found out I was an empath, it suddenly became so clear to me why I did all. I'm like laughing at myself. I'm like, it was like so glaringly obvious. Like looking back, I was like, oh, duh, of course I'm an empath. What? How did I not know this sooner? Like,
We just didn't have the word for it. Like it was
I
just
know.
I didn't know what it
Yes.
meant. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, that's what's so powerful about words. Because if you don't have the words to describe it, then you won't know what it is. But if you have the word to describe, you're like, okay, got it. I get
Oh,
it. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. What else you got? Anything else?
Ooh, I gotta make this one good. Okay. This is my last one. It's my last and final.
If you've got more, we can do more. But
Okay,
yeah, you know, I was
this
just
will be
gonna.
my last and final. I just have to
Okay.
make it good though. Okay, it's a two-parter. Okay.
Okay.
What is the best part and worst part? What's the worst part and best part of running a podcast?
The worst part is literally editing them.
Okay, I was like, you already know it's the work, isn't it?
Well, and I say that because, you know, I've had this fantastic conversation with somebody and we've really gotten into it. And honestly, I don't edit them right after I've had the conversation because I need to sit on it and be like, okay, what stuck out to me? What did it mean to me? But then I have to go back and re-listen to this conversation. And sometimes, and it's probably not even why you think that editing is the hard part. It's listening to myself have these conversations. It's like, why did I say that? Or did I mean it that way? Or did they take it the wrong way? Like I'm constantly second guessing everything I said.
Yeah. You're like, I don't want to listen to myself. I know everybody's so hard on themselves, right? Like,
yeah. There are some conversations I listen to and I'm like, that I'm so glad they carried that. And I'm just here for the ride. Like there's so many good conversations. The best part of it is I get to talk to people like you who have a totally different experience and totally different background and just what you bring to the table. It's fascinating. People fascinate me. I love talking to people about their lives. And then so let's see. Wednesday night, I talked to she's a neuroscientist. I mean, way smarter than I will ever be. She's a neuroscientist who wrote a children's book, you know. So
I love that.
Talk to that person. The day before that, I talked to an 80-year-old woman who was a women's rights activist back in the day. And I'm just like,
I love it. Amazing. Yeah.
So those are my favorite parts. But honestly, the worst part is having to go back and relive some of I'm like, did I do the best I could have done? Yeah.
Just keep that in the archives, hidden away. Delete. Yeah.
Just to make it sound like everything was perfect.
Yeah.
It's like putting the filter on an Instagram picture, you know, it's like, I can't, you know,
I know.
feel
and then sometimes you're kind of like, I don't even have the energy for this. Just post it. It's fine. It's great. Keep the imperfection. Gives it character.
Yes, and I'm going out of my comfort zone next month. I am doing lives with some of my previous guests. We're going to go live and we're going to stream our conversation. We're just going to do a follow-up conversation just to experiment and see how it goes. But you know, do you know the anxiety level? Like every day gets closer. I'm going, is this what I really should be doing? Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I need to do more lives too. So if you want to do lives together, I would be willing to do that. If you want to do that, no pressure. But I loved this conversation and I feel like we should just, you know, go out of our comfort levels together and we could go on lives together at some point. If you want.
Absolutely. I am all there. I have no idea. And that was funny because I think I have 4 of them lined up and I sent them all an email and the subject was buckle up. I have no idea what I'm doing.
That's a great title. I love that. It's your next book, the next book. Yeah, it's a great title. I would read that book.
Yours. Take it. Yeah, no, do it. It's good.
I have no idea what I'm doing.
It'll be the title of my memoir, right? Like,
yes, I love it. I love it.
No idea. That's so funny. Okay, Stephanie, let's talk about how listeners can connect with you and your work. Where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok. My email is info@stefanifryzel.com. I also host the Songwriter Series. It's a one-to-one mentorship program for new musicians and artists that are wanting to connect with hit songwriters. So that's the email that they can reach out to me. I do them quarterly, so it's a 2-hour event and you can get a ticket and I usually curate 3 hit songwriters and it's just a really great opportunity for people to come join in, learn from experts. And I'm the host and I'm the moderator. So that's a really great way to connect with me because we get to spend 2 hours together online. But yeah, I'm on Instagram at Stefani Fryzel. I'm always on there. So you can always DM me, email me, whatever you like. And then my music project is Dylan and it's DYLN on Spotify. And that's me.
And I love it. And all of that'll be in the show notes. And I think, I'm sitting here thinking that singer-songwriter situation, that would be a fantastic thing to go live to talk about, because there are people who are constantly looking for ways. And I've got a story about it that I'll share with you later, but like about songwriting and that kind of thing. But I think that would be a really great topic to go live about, not to do the thing, but to just talk about it. So yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. Okay. So I will put all of your contact information and your handles and stuff in the show notes, so that it'll be as easy as clicking a single button. And now if you're ready, I've got this big question that I ask everybody. So we've had all this time to think about it. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. What is one piece of advice or encouragement that you would want listeners to walk away with if they hear nothing else?
One piece of advice that I would want you to walk away with is to trust your intuition. Trust your intuition, because you're going to come into situations that may challenge you, may question you, and trust your gut, because there may come a time where you don't really know which way to go. But if you just trust your gut, it's never going to let you down. Trust your intuition, girl. Yeah.
No, that is so true though. And if you start doubting it, ask other people, hey, should I trust my gut on this? And they will let you know, hey, you're pretty good at this, or they'll be like, not. But you can ask for verification. But yes, your intuition is there for a reason. It's a survival instinct for a reason.
100%. And what's funny is like, you always know the thing that you need. And I talk about this with self-care too. Like, what you need. And sometimes we're looking for that person to hold up that mirror and reflect back to us, like, and affirm, yes, this is the thing you need. So yeah, if you need that mirror, I got you, girl.
Oh, this has been so much fun, Stephanie. Thank you so much for being here and hanging out with me for this a little bit. We're going to hang out again. Like, there's zero question in my mind. We're going to hang out again.
Yes, we are online.
Thank you for doing this here tonight.